the invitation. And I'm so grateful for the nice surprise yesterday as we toured the prestigious library, and I found my books made their way to your library. Couldn't be more happy, couldn't be more honored. And today I'm going to be sharing the myth, what I call the myth of the elite male addressee, and which I'm using to address 3 problematic verses. And to be honest with you, I'm kind of overwhelmed with such a great group of scholars. I'm sharing about the most problematic, what is considered by many as the most controversial, most problematic verse in the Quran, 434. We already had a fiery and energetic presentation with Sheikh Arif. Where is Sheikh Arif? Is he with us? Yeah, so I'm going to be providing not the whole deal, just a little bit, that there is another interpretation. After all, maybe 434 doesn't stand for giving a license to men to beat their wives. Don't worry, it's not going to be the opposite. My interpretation is not for women, giving women a license to beat their husbands. I mean, it's going to be fair if we do that because you beaten us for 14 centuries. But don't worry. It's not. No one is beating anyone. Okay, no one is beating anyone. But if this is not problematic enough for you, I'm adding to the discussion of domestic violence in the Quran by addressing 434, the discussion of minor marriage. Here we go, Sheikh Arif. We're just mentioning you. I'm going to be adding a discussion of 43, which is a discussion of polygamy in the Quran, and 46, which is a discussion of minor marriage in the Quran, or let's say accusations of Quranic endorsement of domestic violence, Quranic endorsement of minor marriage, and accusations of Quranic endorsement of unfair polygyny or polygamy. So this goes back to 2019 when I published my book, Decoding the Egalitarianism of the Quran, in which I provide a new interpretation for 434, right? And what I'm doing today, I'm using the same methodology, using the myth or the fallacy of the male addressee. I'm applying it to 2 other verses. Now, this flow, which is the male addressee fallacy, I argue is a very serious one, since it violates the applicable validity and even the same meaning of the well-established and unanimously approved doctrine of i'jaz of the Quranic text. If the Quranic language is precisely codified to reveal divinely intended references, then every word, subject pronoun, conjunction, or letter should designate a specific meaning. Unfortunately, the majority of verses that use the masculine plural subject pronoun, which is used in Arabic to address both a group of men or a mixed group, or to address the believing community, both men or women, were commonly interpreted one way, to suggest an exclusively male audience, right? And this is what happened with our, probably this is what happened with with our 3 verses. And let me start with the alleged Quranic endorsement of domestic violence and the consequences of applying the myth of the elite male addressee to 434. Now, while domestic violence exists in both Muslim and non-Muslim societies, the misrepresentation of the Quran as a book that provides a divine justification for domestic violence has caused and is still causing the community much needless embarrassment and shame, to say the least. Right? For this reason, it's critical to address sources of confusion in the scripture itself. At the end of the day, the problem could be in our interpretation of the scripture. And let's remember that we have a complete absence of female voices. I had such a wonderful conversation yesterday with Manzila. Manzila, you're with us. We were talking about how female voices were totally absent. So even with best intentions in place, if we have a dominance of male audience trying to interpret the divine text, you end with a biased interpretation no matter what. And this is only one example of that. Among those who have notably contributed to the discussion are Kisha Ali, Hadia Mubarak, Aisha Chaudhry, Karen Bauer, which I'm honored by her presence with me today, Lori Selvers, Saadia Sheikh, Leila Bukhtiyar, John Andrew Muru, Julianne Hammer, Celine Ibrahim, and Naveen Rida. In my book, Decoding the Egalitarianism of the Quran 2019, I provide another attempt to respond to the controversy the traditional interpretation causes. I start by rejecting both interpretations, of the verse as endorsement of physical abuse when idribuhunna, right, is interpreted as providing a license to men to discipline their wives by beating them, and also which is commonly addressed. And I also refuse or argue against هجرهن في المضاجع as a license to men to use withholding sex, which is a psychological abuse in marriage, to discipline their wives. Many scholars try to, I've seen it a lot, to get away of the embarrassment, I would say, to argue that idribuhunna, beat them, has so many meanings and doesn't stand for physical beating, which is not the case, at least from my linguistic analysis of it. But what about هجرهن في المضاجع? Is psychological abuse better than physical abuse? What if we flip it, do it the opposite? What if we give advice to women that they can withhold sex to correct their husband's behavior? According to Islamic tradition, a woman will be cursed until the morning by angels if she tries to do that. So this is not only a psychological abuse, but it's a sexist punishment, marital punishment as well. So how can we then deal with all these, like a bundle of problems, right? I argue that, and here you can see, this is what I do in my classroom. So usually I highlight all words in English and in Arabic, even for my students who don't read Arabic, just to show them that I'm trying to address everything in the verse itself in Arabic and to respond to it. This is a presentation, this is a translation provided by Dr. Abdul Halim, one of the amazing translations. I used it in my 3 books, but it's typical, it's the traditional interpretation we provided. I have so many concerns about it. I have a book on it, so you need to read the book. So I'm just marketing for my book now, but you can see this is not my translation. But today I'm just sharing with you what led me in the first place to a new translation that I'm going to be sharing with you. Now, the key to understand therefore, I argue, is to go back to the male addressee fallacy. Is it really addressing husbands with correction methods to deal with their rebellious wives, right? No, because it's not addressing husbands. As you can see, الرجال here is not husbands. الرجال is men in Arabic. النساء is not wives. النساء is women in Arabic. بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض is not what, like God, in the way God preferred some of them to women, because that would be, and credit to Amina Wadud, this is not me, that would be بعضهم على بعضهن, the feminine subject pronoun, which means some men are preferred to other men, the qawamun. So it's a preference made between men themselves, not men, against women, right? وَبِمَا أَنفَقُوا مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ, if you want to be qawam, if you want to be considered qawam, you need to spend, right? So the rest of it, and again, I have 20 arguments that will keep, supporting this. I end up with a new interpretation, right? The verse has nothing to do, so I'm taking you to the end of the movie now. Okay, the end of the movie. You need to read the book to know how I do all of that. But here's the thing. It has nothing to do with marital conflicts. It is 3 correction methods addressed to the community of believers, both men and women, with the 3 correction methods to deal with female criminals in the community. It has absolutely nothing to do with wives and husbands. How will we know that? Let's try to go back to 429 where the addressee starts. It starts with, "O you who have believed." Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu. So it's addressing the community of believers, both men and women. And my question is, how did we jump into saying it's addressing the husbands? Again, because it's the male addressee fallacy. Every time you is used in the Quran, exegetes will jump into thinking it's addressing husbands, or at least addressing only men. But ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, right, as in the preceding where the dialogue starts, it's addressing the community of believers, both men and women. If this is not enough for you, there is also the verse that comes after 434. And if you fear dissension between two of them, a husband and a wife, then send arbitrator from his people and an arbitrator from her people. So what do we have? We have another assertion that it's again the community of believers, both men and women are the real addressee here. And here the Quran is giving recommendation how to deal when things escalate between a husband and a wife beyond what they can do together to seek what we call today marriage counseling, right? And my question now, if the preceding verse is if 429 is addressing the community of believers, and the verse that comes after 434, which is 435, is addressing again the community of believers with things they can do to fix someone's marriage. How did we end up saying that in this verse in 434, it's about marital context? I know what some of you might be thinking, and I hope I'll do justice to the verse with the limited time I have, but I'm going to be trying to do my best. So maybe some will say, وَاللَّاتِي تَخَافُونَ نُشُوزُهُنَّ, and the concept of nushuz, Abla, is marital disobedience. The concept of nushuz as exclusively referring to marital disobedience came later on. In the Quran itself we have وَإِنْ قِيلَ لَكُمْ انشِزُوا فَانشِزُوا. When it is told to you stand up, then stand up. So nushuz in the Quran, unless it's clear from the rest of the context that it is marital context, right? Nushuz is standing for high-handedness, doing anything that goes against the norm, which applies perfectly to female violators of laws, female criminals, right? وَهْجُرُهُنَّ فِي الْمَضَاجِعِ, it was misinterpreted as standing for withholding sex. The Quran could never allow withholding sex or recommend it because it will contradict al-dhihar. Yesterday, one of the presentations addressed the severe punishment. I believe it was your presentation. The severe punishment for al-dhihar. If a husband, which was a pre-Islamic habit, if a husband verbally threatened to use withholding sex, right, as a punishment in marriage, he can't go back to his wife, a severe punishment until he fasts non-stop for 2 months. So how can the Quran contradict itself here by going in from prohibiting that in such a strict way into recommending it here? So what is اهجروهن في المضاجع? Madja is a noun place, like مسبح in Arabic, right? It is driven from the root sabaha. It's a place where you do something, right? Madja is a place where you lay down. It used to be homes, used to be 1 bedroom. I believe it's stand up for. So first of all, these are 3 correction methods. So women violators, فَعِذُهُنَّ. So first of all, what you do, you reproach them, you give them warning, you talk to them repeatedly. We don't know how many times. It's not working. فَهْجُرُهُنَّ فِي الْمَضَاجِعِ. Lock them, هجروهن, in their bedrooms or in their houses. And it's, by the way, very Quranic punishment, I would say, because it's repeated elsewhere in the Quran. Again, I'm going to spare you the details. And 5 minutes, time flies. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just say that this is the same methodology I apply to another problematic topic in the Quran, which is the question, does the Quran endorse minor marriage. Unfortunately, until today, many Muslims believe that Prophet Muhammad married Aisha when she was 6 or 7, and the marriage was consummated when she was 9, right? That could never be the case. Why? Because here in the Quran provides us in 4:6 a guidance that when can we give orphans their properties back? It says when they reach marriageable age. And what is the Quranic criterion for marriageable age? If you find sound judgment in them. And it's left loose. Why? This is the habit in the Quran, generality. There is no ambiguity in the Quran. There is generality and flexibility. It's you, communities, decide. What is your definition of sound judgment, right? How you verify it, right? It's up to you. But it can never stand for or apply to minor marriage. Now, how is this related to the male addressee fallacy? Again, because it's when we go back to 4:1 now as the key, it starts with people. People, ya ayyuhan nas, right? Which means it's not up to husbands to decide when they can marry and the age of minor marriage. It should be legally approved by the court, by congregations, by communities. Again, by going back to the real addressee, it's the believing community. Here it's not even the believing community, it's all people. And I do believe there is nothing stands for nothing in the Quran. So it means maybe even for secular communities, you have the right to decide these issues. And let me do the same, applying the male addressee fallacy to polygamy in the Quran, right? So polygamy in the Quran is strictly conditioned. 3 conditions I argue in my book that almost impossible to be met during our time, right? But how do we know that regardless of the conditions? It's plan B for catastrophes where orphans are displaced and they're going to be dismissed, no one will take care of them, all of that. Again, if we go back to the beginning of it, if we go back to 4:1, it's people again. So people are addressed with polygamy as an option to deal with catastrophes where orphans, no social security, the state is dissolving, no one will take care of these displaced orphans, right? Again, it's not husband's authority to say that I'm going to go get a second wife, third wife. I argue according to this because it's addressed to people. First of all, you need the state to declare it's a state emergency, okay, or the court. Second, you need maybe even individually, you need a court order to allow you to do that. Again, it's only rethinking the addressee, the real addressee, which stands for 4:1 here, right? It's something more organized, more fair. The problem, again, let me end with this, the problem might not be in the Quranic text itself. I don't believe in contradiction in the Quranic text, right? But it might be the dominance of patriarchal interpretations, 14 centuries of patriarchal interpretations of the Quranic text. Going back to the language probably can tell us a new story. Thank you.
Thanks for this and thanks for spending your time.
And I talk a lot, so I'm a teacher, I'm paid for talking. So we have all comments and then I try to respond to them according to the limited time I have. So all comments, all questions.